Good evening. If you're in America, it is 11:30 a.m. here in Daegu, Korea. Today is Chuseok, Korean Thanksgiving. So I've got no work yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we're doing 2 Bhagavad Gita live streams this week. And I just realized as I was taking notes on these verses, which will be chapter 7, verse 5 through 8. Actually, my bad. It's actually 5 through 7. I have to change that later. How I've been doing it, where I do like on average 3 or 4 verses per live stream, that's actually exactly how Krishna talks in the Gita. So there's 18 chapters and there's 3 hexads, and then within each chapter, it typically goes like the flow of it is about 3 verses at a time. That's actually how Krishna talks. So, for example, sometimes the first verse in a set, we need a good word for a kind of mini set of verses. It's smaller than a set. It's like smaller than a cluster, like couplet or triad, something like that. Anyway, the first verse may say definitively what it is, and then the second verse may say, well, here's what it really isn't. And then the third verse may exaggerate it in the other way. And then maybe the fourth verse might say, and now, Arjuna, you can see the truth more clearly, or something like that. So to make a small point for Krishna and for any of us who want to use verbal language to educate others, you can speak in this way. You can organize your ideas and your rhetoric so that it goes like 3 verses at a time, where each verse is 4 lines. So even within the verse, there's the same kind of geometry, the same rhythm, which is, it's really this, and it's not really that, and maybe it's little of this, and therefore it's that. Music. Just like music, you start slow, then you go a little fast, then you go really fast or really climax crescendo, and then you can slow down a bit. And then when you zoom out and you look at it from far away, you can see beginning, middle, and end, and it's composed. It's well composed. So that's once again just really excellent. This is what Ethos Ananda is all about. When you're dealing with top level ethos or top level Ananda, you're bound to see parts of the other in there regardless. So this Bhagavad Gita is the highest level Ananda text I know of, although there's bias involved. Like, we could say the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam is more Ananda, or maybe the book of Matthew or Chaitanya Charitamrita is more pure to the juiciness of Ananda. Sure, that's fine. But I mean, as far as a practical text that non-Hindus can read, Bhagavad Gita is much better than the 10th canto or Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you just start reading, one of those more advanced, more personal Ananda books, you might be turned off. You may not be ready for it. But if you start with Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, chapter 2, anyone can read this and instantly benefit, and not only benefit from, because it starts in the beginning with more philosophy, metaphysics, not so much pure Krishna consciousness. Well, now in chapter 7, we're starting to get really close to the personal Krishna, to the personal God. And it's there. The same, all that stuff from 10th canto, Krishna Leela. It's like I said, it's not quite as personal, but it is the same person. The great difference is not difference even, but I mean, what's worth noting is who is the author of the Bhagavad Gita. It's Sri Bhagavan. You're literally reading, even if he's just talking about the three gunas or happiness or something mundane. You're still hearing it from God himself. That's the Bhagavad Gita. You're hearing God himself speak directly to you via a discourse he had with Arjuna 5,000 years ago on a battlefield. And it was also recorded by, his people and has been passed down very well so that there's very little translation errors and very little lost in translation compared to most every other God text that you'll read, the Bible, the Quran. There's always problems. There's problems with the Gita too, with many editions of the Gita, with many translations, with many commentaries. There's always some issues. My point is that the issues here, not just with the 72 Mac edition, but even the later, more edited Jai Israel Swami Bhagavad Gita is still full of so much potency and so much accuracy as compared to Krishna's original word on Kurukshetra. You can feel it. It has direct potency you can directly perceive. Oh yeah, and going back real quick before we start, I know we need to start soon. So this is an Ananda text. That's how I categorize it. But because it's a top level Ananda text, there's also very high ethos in it. And that's what we've been talking about. So 18 chapters divided into 3 6-chapter hexads. And then each chapter goes by 3 verses at a time. Each verse goes by 4 lines at a time. The math there, the rhythm, the geometry, the composition is excellent. It is literally high ethos. Likewise, when you doing a high ethos activity like judo, and you're a top level judo guy doing another top level judo guy, you will dance right next to God, basically, because it's just there's so much raw excellence there that various divinities and divine energy, divine personalities just start to get attracted to it. Like another good example might be Michael Jordan, when he's on his prime doing dunks. There's a feeling in the stadium there which is supernatural, and I don't think it's just a feeling. I think there's actual divinities there who are witnessing and partaking in this as well. And we know this from our scriptures as well. The Gandharvas, the heavenly singers, like Mozart is probably one, who come down, who descend from heaven to bring divine music to this earthly realm, and divine sex as well with the Apsaras. I think Lucy Tai is one of those. Don't look into it. Don't Google it. I just heard it from a friend, I promise. Oh, okay, so that's enough. That was 9:03. That was a clear sign. 9 minutes and 3 seconds in. It's a clear sign to get started. So here we go. Join me if you like in honoring and invoking Sri Bhagavan via his Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Here we go, folks. Chapter 7, verse 5. Wish I had water. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty-armed Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mind, which are all living entities who are struggling with material nature and are sustaining the universe. So in the last verse, Krishna said there's this inferior energy of his, which is the 8 elements of the material world. And now we're talking about, as you'd expect, once again, there's a basic rhythm here to Krishna's rhetoric. When he says there's an inferior X, you can expect in the next verse, he's going to talk about the superior Y. This is math. This is geometry. This is ethos. It's also Ananda. It's also definitely Ananda. But that doesn't mean you can't be excellent. Prabhupada is a great example of ethos Ananda. I mean, he had a fantastic ethos. Not just a saint. He was not just a top-level saint. He was intelligent, resourceful. He had many non-spiritual, high ethos character qualities. What else? I mean, obviously he was compassionate, but that's not ethos. That's not mundane ethos. That's from the spiritual world. But he was business savvy, for sure. He was really prudential intelligence and wisdom. That's mundane ethos. High ethos within the mundane realm, but it's still mundane. Wisdom, geez, what else? Maybe friendliness. He had compassion, but he also had a down-to-earth kind of friendliness that may be categorized as mundane ethos, but I think it's more like just how it appears to us when a Mahabhagavat descends to play out the role of Madhya Madhikari for our benefit. Yeah. So as I was reading this verse, I thought, and I'm still thinking now, maybe it is a slight grammar problem to say which are all living entities. It might technically be that are all living entities. I always myself had trouble with this. When to use which, when to use that. It's definitely not who, because we're talking about energy. Energy is a thing, so you could do that or which. The problem is it's plural, which normally which is for one thing. So it wouldn't be which or that, it would be those. There's a superior energy of mine. Those are all, no, it's not those either. That being all living entities. Anyway, once again, the only mistakes that I find are the ones that really don't matter and the ones that, not we, but that the original editors, they did have Prabhupada's instruction and grace to edit some things. Only small, tiny little things that don't matter, like using which or that, really doesn't matter. And the only reason it even comes up is because the English has fundamental stupidity built into it that you don't find in Sanskrit. And I would suspect Hindi does as well. A lot of modern languages really suck. So once again, the best way to understand the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedas is really to read it in Sanskrit. And that doesn't mean read it in Sanskrit and then translate it to your own language. I mean, you know Sanskrit and you read the Sanskrit itself, by itself, using its own lens on itself. That's the pure way to do it, which is very difficult, but just saying, just keep it in mind, please, because it's true. So in my notes here, I wrote, this verse is very affirming to the New Age community because of the part where it says, the living entities are sustaining the universe. You can hear a lot of New Age people talking about how this whole world is a dream. And because it's a dream, we have way more power than we think we have. And we can actually change everything. That's true. But the problem is we have to collectively and harmoniously and unitingly do that, which we're at the moment as a species utterly unable to do. Even China, like the most collective nation I know of, there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it division, but there's a lot of individual differences. There, the reason it works is because the things that every Chinese person does agree on are very simple, obvious, basic things, like have a good family. That's better than having a bad family. And having a family is better than not having a family. And eating rice is better than not eating rice. Like, there's just like 3 or 4 other things worth mentioning that every other Chinese person is like, yes, I agree. That's true. That's me. That's we. That's us. Let's do it. Let's go. Having a job is better than not having a job. Therefore, if your job sucks, you don't complain. You do your duty, and if you do it well, you will be rewarded. That's what Krishna says as well. So I love the Chinese. I love living there. They're actually following the first hexad of the Gita better than most other people. I would say oftentimes even better than the Koreans, of course, who are more economically advanced by far, per capita, definitely by far more advanced, but that comes at a cost. Anyway, so, and then I also wrote here, how else can us fallible living entities be sustaining a universe if it's not a dream? If it's actually a very real place that is very advanced and difficult to sustain, then how could we sustain it? We suck. And also what Krishna's hinting at here, just as he did in the last verse, that the 8 material elements that compose the entire universe, this all seems so big to us from our limited material lens. From Krishna's lens, it's his inferior energy. Like the material world and the 8 material elements to Krishna is like a fart. It's like a fart he did 10 years ago. It's nothing. It's nothing, nothing, nothing. And even the living entities, who are we? Us gods on earth who slaughter the animals mercilessly and laugh and ha 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 ha, and we build our skyscrapers. Oh, we are so powerful. Who are we? We are merely the superior energy of the Lord. That's like if the material energy is a fart of Krishna from 10 years ago, the superior energy is his breath from 10 minutes ago. Like your life and death was just that Krishna did, even less than that, 10 minutes ago. He's already beyond it. It's because Krishna is, and we're going to talk about this later, Krishna is the energetic and we are the energy. So energy comes from and is controlled by the energetic. And in a very simple technical sense, energy is inferior, or a better word is subordinate to the energetic. Not obvious to many, but another common analogy used in the Gita, and I think maybe from the Bhagavatam or something, is that the sun, and Prabhupada does use this in the Gita as well. It's in one of these verses I remember that we're talking about today. The sun is actually a demigod. It's a person. But that person is hidden by the external energies that he is emitting, which are so, by our lens, by our perspective, so vast, so powerful. They bring life and whoa, and if you get too close to the sun, you're just burned alive instantly, and it's like 1,000 nuclear bombs, But from the perspective of the personal demigod himself within the sun planet, that's his external energy that he's just pushing out. That's his sweat. That's his refuse. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, that's just in the same way that we breathe. And then in many of our exhales, there are millions of microorganisms that are just shot out of our face hole. And maybe millions of them die every second, depending on what environment we're in. We are gods. But compared to the gods above us, we're not gods. We're just little tiny shit things. Pardon my language here, but it's very important to understand this accurately. And sometimes colorful language helps us to do that. I am sincerely apologizing, but at the same time, there's a much greater fault that I'm not doing that other people do, which is which is not really following the masters, including God. So once again, this is why I talk about how Krishna uses rhetoric, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm not as good at it as Krishna is. I'm not as classical. I'm not as eloquent. I'm not as perfect, obviously. But at the fundamental level, I'm doing the same thing by using exaggerations, changing my voice tone, putting emphasis and color in certain places. So the listener goes, huh, 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 huh. Oh, should I pay attention to that part more than the others? Yes, you should. That's it. It's just a means to an end. It's not the end. So a bad way of following the rules is, oh, look, he said the S word one time. He's not a devotee. He's not a Brahmin. Duh, 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 duh. No, that's childish. That's wrong. You're not getting the fundamentals when you act like that. That's fanatical and dogmatic, which goes in the way of real religion. Not in the way, which gets in the way of real religion. Once again, English sucks. We all got to deal with it however we can. And I wrote here, the word for word translation tells a different story. So let's look at that quickly. Yes. So Prakriti, I think many devotees may know this already, but for me, I need to remind myself of this. The material energy and the superior energy, that is us, are all Prakriti, which Prabhupada translates here as energy, but more importantly, it's like material energy. But anyway, like that's you can see. I forget how Prakriti. You can translate it as energy, but you can also translate it to other words, which I don't remember. But it isn't. It's important enough where you want to remember when you're reading the English verse here, a superior energy of mind. It's not prana energy. It's a different energy than that. That's why it's prakriti. So pra is the same with both those words. So that's probably significant. But what's different, I don't know. I'll have to study that more if I can, hopefully. And the living entities, Krishna uses the word jiva bhutam. Hridayananda Maharaj talks about that a lot. The word bhutam means like creatures, like created beings, especially. And jiva as a word is less significant than atma, right? They both can mean soul. A jiva is a soul and atma is a soul, but atma can also be the soul. And there's like atma tattva, but jiva is kind of lower than that. Jiva is like the word used for the many, many, many souls, many of whom are ignorant, many of whom are sinful and not totally worthy of respect, as opposed to atma, which is always worthy of respect. The atma within is something we aspire to. And then once we achieve the atma, then we can achieve the paramatma, which is even higher and more worthy of respect, like this. And then Krishna uses the word dharyate, which means being utilized or exploited, the material world, jagat. So in the translation, it says, struggling with material nature, but then the word for word, it says, being utilized or exploited by the material world. But then in the purport, Prabhupada says what's, I think, a more clear truth, that we are actually utilizing or exploiting this material world. We are, and that's where we get to sustaining the universe, is this material world really comes from us more than it comes from Krishna. Like, obviously everything comes from Krishna, but if we didn't have forgetfulness and sinful desires, then we wouldn't have material world. This whole material world is only here, primarily here, so that we can utilize it, so we can exploit it, and we will also get exploited by it. It's a mutual relationship, reciprocal relationship. And it doesn't, then that can change. So, but especially in Kali Yuga, it's only going to change one individual at a time. So when one individual says, no, I'm done, then that person leaves and they don't come back again. And to them, there is no material world. Unless they want to come back to it, then it's there again. So, and that's what I mean, where we're like creating it. It's if you want it, it's there. If you don't want it, it's not there. Like, you don't have to live in a world of art, of like great paintings around you. But if you want that, you can create, just quickly create that world. You can go to the store, buy paintings, you can make them yourself. If you have that desire, you'll just start creating that reality. We are Prakriti. And in my notes here, this is kind of what I just talked about, but in a maybe more succinct way. So Krishna literally says that the jivas are utilizing and exploiting the material world. Although the grammar might be the material world is utilizing or exploiting the jivas. I'm not sure about that. And that is a bit different than the living entities are sustaining the universe. But ultimately, both are true. And that's why I'm really stressing the importance of doing both, reading the English translation and the word-for-word translation, and of course the purport too. Now, this is confirmed in the purport, where Prabhupada says that the living entities who are superior energy are exploiting the inferior energy for different purposes. And he says, quote, this is how the entire material world functions. So what is actually being exploited here? It's the superior energy exploiting the inferior energy, which is exactly what you would expect. And once again, this is why Krishna speaks the way he does, where he says, this is inferior energy, this is superior energy. He introduces it in this order so that once you see that this is inferior and that is superior, and then he says the superior exploits the inferior, it's like, oh, yeah, duh, obviously. And then Prabhupada also mentions here, because we are ultimately just energy, that means we must be controlled by the energetic. And this also means that because the energy is always controlled by the energetic, in this case being the Lord, that also means the jivas have no independent existence. Yeah, I can't find it in the purport, but we're running low on time. So we're already like 30 minutes in. This is ridiculous. I have a lot of free time this holiday. So for me, I don't mind. But one of these days, if someone actually watches these, they're going to be like, all right, hurry it up, bro. Hurry up, teacher. I get that a lot in my classes. Hurry up, teacher. It's really lovely to hear that, because it means they actually want They actually like teacher, and they want they like the curriculum at least. There's actually some, some part of the process they're genuinely like engaging in, and I'm very happy to see that. If it's not me and it's the books, fine, let's do the books. If it's me and it's not the books, fine, let's do me. We'll do both. I don't care. Both or one, but not neither. Verse 6. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both its origin and dissolution. First thing to note here is these Sanskrit words for origin and dissolution. Origin is prabhavaha, which is source of manifestation, literally origin, you could say. And then pralayaha is annihilation. Annihilation is definitely a much stronger word than dissolution. So in Sanskrit, it's much stronger terms. They are polar opposites in the most extreme total sense, as opposed to the English words, origin and dissolution. Dissolution is not the opposite of origin. And I'm not saying Prabhupada made a mistake here. I'm just saying that's how English works. The opposite of dissolution is solution. See how that works? But what is the opposite of origin? It's not so easy to know. That's why Prabhupada, one of the reasons I'm sure why he chose this word here, the wording here. What is the opposite of origin? Death? Origin is where something comes from. So the opposite is like where it dies, where it no longer comes or goes. I don't think we have a word for that in English. But in Sanskrit, it's much more clear. Prabhavaha and pralayaha. And they both start with pra. That's significant. That indicates that they are intimately, logically, and linguistically connected. And the second part of the word is how they're opposite. Prabhavaha and pralayaha. And bhavaha is, I believe, the same word as bhutam, which we get for a jiva bhutam, the creatures that are created. Prabhavaha, their creation. Bhav, bhut, created. But material creation, specifically. And that is source of manifestation. So even before something can be manifested, that source is prabhavaha. And then pralayaha, annihilate, means completely destroyed so that it goes back to source. So it goes back to the same pra, something like this. This is just the beauty of Sanskrit. You can do these things in Sanskrit and Chinese and other languages. It's very difficult to do that in English. So once again, Prabhupada is doing the best he absolutely can with what he has, and it cannot be made better. And once again, I wish if we could go back in time, he would just say no editing, not even typos. Don't edit a single damn thing. I wish he would have done that with his disciples. That would have been better, I think, but that's okay. So in the purport, we hear more explicitly how the material world is manifested only on the basis of spiritual energy, which is the same New Age idea that this is all a dream and we actually could change everything if we simply unite and agree to do so. And in the end of the purport, we see that we are not actually gods. Even though we can make a skyscraper, we cannot create matter out of nothing. That's a very important point that Prabhupada really tries to work in here towards the end of the purport with some eloquence. So I'm going to see if I can read Prabhupada here. Oh, that's 6. That's 5. Here's 6. Yeah. Quote, a fragmental part and parcel of the Lord, namely the living entity, may by manipulation of material energy construct a skyscraper, factory, or city, but he cannot create matter out of nothing, and he certainly cannot construct a planet or a universe, unquote. I'm lost. Sorry, guys. I'm lost in another world of resentment and different things. I always suffer more from other living entities than anything else. There's no tsunami that I'm scared of. So, what is the cause of the universe? Sarvakarana Karanam. That's what I'm saying. It is the super soul Krishna, the supreme creator of all individual souls and the original cause of all causes. Oh, yeah, Sarvakarana Karanam. But as it's said in the Katha Upanishad, it's Nityo Nityanam Chetananam. Dope. Okay, verse 7. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Unquote. One thing I noticed the first time here, Prabhupada capitalized truth, big T for truth. I've noticed it many times when he does a capital M for me, because it should be that way. This is God speaking personally. You should capitalize that. And also the capital H for when he says like this and that. And you can see this in the Bible as well, other religious texts. So that's good. That's there. That's standard. But big T for truth, that is significant. Thank you, Prabhupada. That means he's not talking about mundane truth. It means he's talking about absolute truth. One reason it's really important to distinguish these things is because for his reader, for Prabhupada's average reader, who is a native English speaker, or just most people in Kali Yuga from 1970 up until today and beyond, in our upbringing, we don't actually know anything beyond mundane truth. And even the mundane truth, we don't know. Not properly. We are fed, we are force-fed it, we are indoctrinated in it. We are not taught it properly. We don't have the trivium and the quadrivium and taught critical thinking and educated properly in anything, in mundane truth or superior truth. We just don't. We're just stupid monkeys. So it has to be distinguished. The good must be distinguished from the bad, and the high must be distinguished from the utmost high. There must be discernment and discrimination and distinguishment there. It must be there. So this is a famous verse that you'll see Prabhupada and others quoting many times with the analogy of the pearls on the thread. And in this case, for me, it's significant because the word for thread is sutre, which we still use in English, like suture. A surgeon will suture up the skin or something like that. And this is also the same word that we use for sutras. Especially Buddhist texts use the word sutra, I think more than the famous Hindu ones, like the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, and so on. So the sutra means thread. So a thread is a scripture. It's a small scripture which is part of the big fabric of reality, of the divine, and that's also where we can use a significant English idiom, losing the thread. There are many devotees, not just in Krishna consciousness, in ISKCON, but many devotees of the Lord in every walking faith that lose the thread. Sometimes they get so lost in the minutia, in the ritual, in the routines, they lose the forest for the trees. They lose the thread that's running inside and underneath all things, not just all religious things, but all things. That thread is Krishna. And on that thread are many great pearls. And those pearls are lovely. And many, Prabhupada will say here in the purport, many impersonalists will see the great pearls and glorify them. And many personalists will see the pearls and the thread and maybe glorify the thread or glorify both. Lord Chaitanya gave us Achintya Bedha Abedha Tattva, so we know it's both. And that's what I try to do. I try to worship both. And that's why while I'm in a foreign country and I don't know the language, some parts of my sadhana are just so difficult to follow. Not the essential things, but the really small, like onions and garlic. That's the only example I'm going to say out loud for now. But the fundamental things, I don't follow because I took a vow. I follow because it's the way. Like doing 16 rounds, being celibate, I don't need to kick myself in the face to get myself to keep doing it. I have a taste for it because I know it works, because I've already experienced it working for me. So why would I stop? Makes no sense. I was that way before I got initiated as well, which is one reason I got initiated, is because I knew I don't need to. That's one reason I did. So if I don't now, then when? It'll be some Ritvik thing, or I don't know. I definitely want to be close to Prabhupada because I know there's like basically no one higher. It's only Jesus. Only Jesus is higher than Prabhupada. Where is Buddha? Buddha did great work, and he, you can still follow his teachings to your great benefit, but where is he? Are there any stories? Are there any testimonies of Buddha appearing, manifesting in people's lives today? I haven't heard of any. There probably are, but not in English. It's probably in Thai language or whatever. And I just don't have access to that media. But Jesus is very much acting in the world still today. And you can hear stories after Prabhupada physically left of appearing to his disciples in dreams mostly, but in other ways that, shows he's still here. Not physically here, but he's still taking care of his people, which is one of the whole points of like being, spiritually advanced, is you like care about spirit. So those spirits that have taken shelter of you, you just take care of them, regardless of where you are, dead, alive, this planet, another planet. It's just, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? I don't know the mechanics of this, of course, astral realm, and that's why the New Age fails. It's because they get lost in all the minutia of all this fantastical crap, and they lose the thread underneath it all, which is that there is actual divinity in the universe, and the game is just touching the divinity and holding on to it. That's it. There ain't nothing else. Because as soon as you stop doing it, in this world, in this time, that actually does mean that there's evil getting in there. So, like, for instance, like this kind of fanaticism and dogmatic extremism stuff we're talking about, that's a form of evil. That's not good. That's why I'm telling you it's not good, because it's actually not good. Doesn't mean you have to only be divine all the time. Like, you can be moderate. You can practice moderation. That works too. Anyway, oh boy, here we go. This is unbelievable. I'm sweating. I have my AC on right in front of me. I know it's working, but I'm sweating, man. I don't know why. It's definitely hot today. I guess it's just seeping in everywhere. Oh. Yeah, so the purport here is really interesting. I recommend everyone who listens to this read for themselves the entire purport to 7.7 here, because, and I'm not sure why. I'm also asking you to do that so you can hopefully tell me why Prabhupada really gets passion. It honestly feels like there's some kind of vengeance or something. There's some personal trigger that happened in him where he's really beating it into us that Krishna is a person. He is not just energy. He really is a person. He dedicates this whole purport to that idea. And I couldn't figure out why this verse. But Prabhupada does say that, like, this is one of those verses that, like, we use to defeat the impersonalists. And he mentions one verse the impersonalists use in the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, and how they focus on the word arupam to say, oh, God is impersonal. But then, there's this other verse from the same Upanishad that actually says God is a person. Okay. And then there's another verse as well. And arupam, rupam is like personal form. So arupam is like the negative of that, right? So, but Prabhupada says that is not impersonal. It indicates the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Satchidananda Vigraha. Once again, as with all this stuff, it's just about how deep do you want to go? Do you get Brahmajyoti realization? You stop there. Oh, this is great. Everything's all one. Okay, that's fine for you, but that doesn't mean it's true. Do you get Paramatma realization and stop, and think, I've made it, I'm enlightened, and there's nothing else. That's all there is to it. That's great for you. It really is great for you. It's very rare and very amazing, but that doesn't mean it's true. So it takes one to know one. And we are reading from a book written by Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami, who has actually made it there, who actually knows the personal Krishna, like, personally. They actually know each other. They're actually, like, tight, So there's really only one fundamental way that any reader of this book, any listener to my live stream, will approach all of this. Either Prabhupada and Krishna are lying to you, or they are not. It should be very evident here that it's not a lack of intelligence. You can't say they're stupid. You can't say Krishna's stupid. You can't say Prabhupada is stupid. It takes so much difficulty to speak this way as Krishna did in such perfect rhythm and form that's just like way too difficult and advanced. And for Prabhupada to translate it word by word and with the purport and the puncture and doing everything he did there, it's not easy. We're dealing with very intelligent personalities. It is obvious on the face of it. That means what they're saying is either true or not true. And it cannot be mostly true or only part true. It cannot be that way because they are talking about absolute truth. That's the subject matter here. You can't be taught, as soon as you say, I'm talking about absolute truth, that means it must be absolutely true or not. So if someone says, I'm telling you the absolute truth, and what they're telling you is not the absolute truth, that means they're lying. That doesn't mean they're trying hard and it means they're lying to you. That's what it means. So, because if they don't have the absolute truth, they should just be honest and say, I'm going to give you a mundane truth, or I'm going to give you a high truth. But as soon as you say the highest truth, superlative form, from that point on, these masters have put themselves deliberately into a corner, and so that they can be, pardon the imagery, crucified. And that's what happened with Jesus. He put himself into a corner where the other people, they had to choose, follow him and come to heaven, or kill him and burn in hell. Like, they chose to kill him. And there are many people who may read this and think, oh, I don't believe it, I want to do something else or whatever. It's like, you do that at your own demise. Absolute truth that we're reading about, learning here, it either is or it isn't. So if you're reading this and you think it isn't, that means it doesn't just mean you're wrong and that you're not benefiting. It means you're also unconsciously, typically, calling Prabhupada a liar, calling Krishna a liar. There's very deep disrespect involved with that as well. So, guys, that's in conclusion, I think that's basically it. That's all I got for you. I mean, there's one more thing in my notes, but my point is they're not lying. They're really intelligent. That much is obvious. And second of all, they're just not lying to us. They're just telling us the truth for our benefit, not for theirs. They're good. They're chilling. They are on high. They are kings and emperor on high. They're fine. But they're saying this and doing it for our benefit. And it's not only them. It's not only causeless mercy that we just get. Like, we have to, as the Bible says, put in Ephesians 6:11, we have to wear the armor and take up the sword. The sword is the word of God, and the armor is the truth and righteousness. We have to don the armor and pick up the sword and be ready to use it. It's up to us. Like, they will help us too, but it's up to us too. So yeah, the only other note I wrote here is that when I think of pearl strung on a thread, how I interpret this verse and analogy is like, I just see that image. It's actually kind of beautiful what happens in my mind. I begin by I just see the bottom half of a thread, and then I see like 6 pearls lined up on it, and then I see that being worn by Krishna around his neck. So that's just what I do with this, just naturally. That's just how I read it. And that's a very personal, when I read it, I just it just very quickly, naturally, I think, oh, and if you look at Krishna behind me here, it looks like he may have a pearl necklace on there. There may be many images of Krishna wearing pearl threaded jewelry. which should really help us to meditate on Krishna. Well, I better get out of here before we reach the 1 hour mark. Thanks for playing, everyone. Hare Krishna to you. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama to everyone. Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And glories to every other devotee of the Lord and every other faith. You're welcome here too. Maybe not in ISKCON, but you're welcome here with me. Hare Bol.